Derived from the Latin juris and prudentia, jurisprudence is the knowledge and skill required to understand the science of law. By identifying the underlying principles and theories of a legal system, we can see how thousands of individual statutes function as a coherent whole. That system rests on 5 pillars: legal theory, sources, persons, liability, and property. They operate in strict sequence. Theory forms the rule, sources enforce it, persons are bound, liability penalizes, and property defines the physical assets. Abstract legal theory remains entirely theoretical until it is crystallized by landmark judicial precedents, the specific cases where judges force philosophy to meet reality. Mapping these pillars transforms a series of isolated definitions into a logical framework for categorizing and solving complex exam problems. This chart breaks John Austin's command theory down. Positive law is a command set by a superior, backed by punishment. 3 elements: command, sovereign, sanction. But what happens when the sovereign is legally limited? Austin claimed the sovereign must be unlimited. The Supreme Court of India addressed this gap in the case of Ananda Bharathi case. The court established the basic structure doctrine. This ruling proved that in India, the constitution limits the legislature, meaning the parliament does not possess the absolute sovereignty Austin described. H.L.A. Hart offered a sophisticated positivism, the union of primary and secondary rules. Primary rules impose duties. Secondary rules govern the system itself, dictating how to recognize, change, and adjudicate those primary rules. Legal theory evolved from a singular authoritarian command into a self-regulating network of rules. The second pillar determines exactly where these rules originate. This decision tree maps sources of law. Legislation splits into supreme, made by Parliament, and subordinate, by delegated bodies. Custom is the oldest. To gain force of law, it must pass a checklist: antiquity, continuous enjoyment, and certainty. In common law systems, the central engine of rulemaking is precedent, governed by the doctrine of stare decisis, to stand by what has been decided. For exams, separate a judgment into 2 parts. The ratio decidendi is the reason for the decision, the legal principle binding future courts. The obiter dicta are things said by the way, observations that may persuade but do not bind. These sources act as the mechanical processes that convert theoretical philosophy into an actionable code. The third pillar defines the entities subject to that code. The law separates humans, natural persons, from juristic persons. A juristic person is a non-human entity, like a corporation or university, to which the law attributes legal capacity. The legal status of the juristic person as an entity distinct from its members was established in Solomon v. Solomon & Co. Limited. Mr. Solomon incorporated his shoe business. When it went bankrupt, creditors tried to hold him personally liable. The House of Lords ruled a validly incorporated company is a separate legal entity. The corporate veil shields the individual from corporate debts. How these legal persons interact is mapped by Holfeld's analysis. This matrix visualizes rights and their correlatives. If A has a right, B has a corresponding duty. If A has a liberty, B has a no right to interfere. Legal personality is a constructed fiction. It exists because society requires a mechanism to scale businesses, hold property collectively, and execute complex rights. The fourth pillar dictates the triggers that activate legal consequences when those duties are breached. This sliding scale maps the degrees of legal culpability. It begins on the left with direct intention, requiring mens rea, and moves right through decreasing levels of required fault. The monumental shift toward negligence based on a general duty of care was defined in the landmark case Donahue v. Stevenson. It established the neighbor principle. Liability triggers when you failed to exercise reasonable care toward anyone foreseeably affected by your acts or omissions. At the far right of the scale is the exception to fault-based liability, established in Rylands v. Fletcher. Strict liability dictates that if an actor brings something non-natural and dangerous onto their land, they are liable for its escape, even if they took 0 negligent actions. Proof of fault is entirely removed. Liability acts as the legal architecture's immune response, automatically rebalancing the system when an obligation is violated. The final pillar governs the physical and intangible assets that persons fight over. Salmon defines ownership as a complete bundle of rights, the absolute power to use, possess, transfer, and destroy an object. Ownership is a de jure right. Possession is a de facto physical reality. Savigny notes legal possession requires two elements: corpus possessionis, direct physical control, and animus domini, intention to hold it as owner. Missing either breaks the claim. When possession is violated, the law applies Aristotle's concept of corrective justice, utilizing civil and criminal sanctions to restore the injured party. Ownership and possession are the tangible physical manifestations of the entire legal structure's invisible authority. The logic of the system is now visible. Theory generates the sources, which govern the actors, who trigger liabilities, to control physical property. The framework is held together by its load-bearing precedents: Kesavananda, Salomon, Donahue, and Rylance. To dominate a jurisprudence exam, you must master the contrasts. Compare Austin's command to Hart's rules. Differentiate ratio from obiter. Separate ownership from possession. Statutes and judicial decisions align within this five-pillar structure. By navigating this blueprint, you can predict the legal outcome of almost any dispute between rights and duties.